This story takes place in the dimly lit halls of St. Mary's High School, where whispers of an old legend echoed among the students. They talked about the basement ghost, a haunting creature rumored to lurk in the depths of the school basement. Many dared each other to venture into its depths, but only a few were brave enough to do so. One fateful night, a group of brave teenagers decided to explore the forbidden territory. The expedition was led by Jack, known for his fearlessness. Among them was Sarah, smart and skeptical, Mike, a cowardly guy, and Emily, a quiet but curious girl. When they gathered near the stairs leading to the basement, a heated argument broke out among them.
"I will not go down there under any circumstances," Mike exclaimed, stubbornly crossing his arms over his chest.
"Come on, Mike, don't be such a chicken," Jack retorted, rolling his eyes.
"Who knows what might be hiding there?"
Mike objected, with concern in his voice. Sarah chimed in, her brow furrowed in concern. "He's right, Jack. Maybe we should rethink this." But this didn't scare Jack. His thirst for adventure overcame all caution. "Okay, whatever. I'll go down alone if I have to." With that, he walked down the creaking stairs into the darkness below, his friends reluctantly following. The air became colder with every step, sending a chill down their spines. When they reached the foot of the stairs, an eerie silence enveloped them, broken only by the faint sound of dripping water. Jack led the way, his flashlight cutting through the shadows like a beacon of hope. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a heart-breaking scream echoing from the cold, damp walls. Sarah's heart was pounding as she grabbed Jack's hand tightly, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" Emily uttered, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Before anyone could respond, a dark figure materialized in front of them, its ghostly form illuminated by the dim glow of Jack's flashlight. They were frozen in horror as he flew toward them, his empty eyes fixed on their trembling bodies. Suddenly, the figure let out a blood-curdling scream, sending them running toward the safety of the stairwell. They rushed up the stairs, their hearts pounding in their chests, desperately trying to escape the clutches of the basement phantom. Once out of the basement, they collapsed against a wall, gasping for breath. Their minds reeled from the terrifying encounter they had just experienced. "You guys, where's Mike?" said Emily, horrified to discover that their friend was missing. "I remember he was running after me. I think Mike was last," Sarah said quickly. "Mike is there alone! We need to go back to the basement!" Emily shrieked loudly. Jack grabbed Emily by the shoulders, his expression serious. "We cannot allow anyone to go down there now. It's too dangerous. Let's wait until morning." "We have to warn everyone about that phantom in the basement," Sarah said, her voice trembling. The next day, the teenagers returned to school, their hearts heavy with worry for their missing friend. They spread the word about Mike's disappearance, calling on their classmates and teachers to help search the basement, but their cries for help were not heard. Everyone thought it was a stupid joke. Jack, Emily, and Sarah suspected the school principal, Mrs. Tyker, of conspiracy. She tried bringing the teenagers to their senses, saying that their story about Mike's disappearance was nonsense. Jack noticed how hurriedly she spoke, as if she wanted to close the topic as soon as possible. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of Mike. In the quiet moments between classes, a ghostly voice could be heard in the hallways pleading for help. It seemed to emanate from the very walls of the school, a constant reminder of the friend they had lost. Despite their best efforts, they were not able to rally a search party to find him. But Jack, Sarah, and Emily couldn't shake the memory of that terrible night, haunted by the disappearance of their friend. They were determined to uncover the truth about the mysterious ghost and put an end to Mike's disappearance at any cost. Despite ridicule from their peers and reluctance from the school officials to investigate, the trio began their search for answers. They delved into the school's history, looking through old records and talking to former students and teachers who might know the dark secrets of the basement. Their investigation led them to a retired janitor named Philip, who had worked at the school for decades. He hesitated to share stories of strange happenings in the basement, stories of unexplained noises and sightings that school officials kept quiet about. Philip shared that it was in the basement that he completely lost his sight.
Everything happened very quickly. I heard the strange sound of fasteners in the basement. Went downstairs and suddenly saw a flash of light. Then I woke up in the hospital, and from that day on, I was completely blind,
Philip revealed in a monotonous voice. Before the three friends left, he gave them a book that he thought could help them. Sarah put it in her bag. The children thanked him and departed. Despite their terrible fear, Jack, Sarah, and Emily decided to return to the basement and confront the ghost once and for all. They descended into the darkness, their hearts pounding with morbid anticipation. As they explored the labyrinthine corridors of the basement, they encountered eerie manifestations of the supernatural, flickering lights, sudden temperature changes, and disembodied whispers that seemed to echo from the very walls. But they kept going, determined to uncover the truth. Finally, they reached the heart of the basement, a forgotten room hidden deep beneath the school. There, they made a shocking discovery that would change everything they knew about the ghost. With the help of their flashlights, they came across a secret passageway leading to a room full of old documents and artifacts. Among the dusty relics, they found a faded photograph that made them all shudder. It was a portrait of a boy who bore a striking resemblance to Mike. But what surprised them most was that standing next to him was their headmistress, Mrs. Tyker. With trembling hands, they pieced together the truth about the legend of the ghost in the basement. Decades ago, a tragic accident claimed the life of the school principal's son, Mike, whose spirit had been trapped underneath the grounds ever since. That's why Mrs. Tyker didn't help the investigation. It was her son who died many years ago. And to keep him close, she locked his spirit within the walls of the school. Filled with a newfound sense of purpose, Jack, Sarah, and Emily vowed to help free Mike's troubled spirit and bring peace to the haunted hallways of St. Mary's High School. Suddenly, there was a shaking and a strong wind that seemed to come from nowhere. Jack and Emily huddled together in fear, and Sarah remembered the book Philip had given her. The book opened from the force of the wind, and at that moment, Sarah realized that a spell was written on the page. The teenagers stood in a circle around the book, holding hands. They loudly repeated the words from the book as the wind became stronger and stronger. Just when it seemed that the children were doomed to die, in an instant, everything stopped. Standing together in the dimly lit room, they felt a sudden rush of warmth and light envelop them, dispelling the darkness that had haunted the school for so long. Suddenly, they heard a familiar voice. They ran toward it and, to their incredible happiness, found Mike lying on the floor, exhausted. The children pulled him out of the basement as quickly as possible and called his parents. At that moment, the children realized that they had finally put the ghost of the basement to rest. From that day on, the legend of the ghost in the basement became nothing more than a distant memory, a cautionary tale passed down from generation to generation. But for Jack, Sarah, Emily, and Mike, it will always be a reminder of the worst day of their lives. In the very center of town stood an old, dilapidated circus tent that had not been seen by the public for many years. Its once bright colors had faded, and an eerie silence had replaced the noisy atmosphere. However, Despite its abandonment, rumors circulated among city teenagers about strange phenomena occurring in the tent at night. One stormy evening, a group of brave teenagers decided to explore the abandoned circus tent. Among them were Sarah, the fearless leader, Max the skeptic, Lily the curious one, and Jake the prankster. As they approached the dilapidated tent, the wind howled in the air, causing a shiver to run down their spines. Lightning lit up the sky, casting ominous shadows on the ground. Sarah led the group inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The smell of mustiness and decay hung in the air, and the sound of footsteps echoed ominously. Sarah found an old, ugly clown mask and started trying it on herself, making fun of and scaring her friends.
Are you sure this is a good idea, Sarah? Max whispered nervously.
Relax, Max. It's just an old mask. You should see your faces. It's very funny, Sarah answered with a laugh. Suddenly, they heard faint whispers and laughter echoing through the empty tent. Lily grabbed Jake's hand, her eyes wide with fear. Did you hear that? Jake snorted derisively, trying to hide his concern. The wind probably played a cruel joke on us. But before he could finish his sentence, a clown's laugh was heard from the shadows, making everyone freeze in horror. Sarah, stop it! This isn't funny anymore, Lily said in a trembling voice. That's not me, Sarah said timidly. Suddenly, a flickering light illuminated the darkness, and a group of sinister clowns appeared from the shadows, their faces distorted with evil grins. The clowns that populated the haunted circus were like a nightmare, their twisted forms and evil grins sending shivers down the spines of anyone unlucky enough to cross their paths. Their faces were painted in bright colors, but instead of bringing joy, their exaggerated features only emphasized their sinister nature. Their eyes were dark pits, devoid of all humanity, shining with an otherworldly light that seemed to pierce the darkness like daggers. Their mouths stretched into grotesque smiles, filled with rows of sharp teeth that sparkled in the dim light of the circus tent. Each clown wore a tattered costume, adorned with patches and stains that spoke of years spent in the shadows. Their movements were abrupt and unpredictable, like puppets controlled by invisible forces. They moved with an unnatural grace, their limbs bending and twisting in ways that defied logic. But perhaps the most terrifying thing about these clowns was the sound of their laughter. It echoed through the empty corridors of the circus tent like a death knell, sending chills through everyone who heard it. Looking at these clowns meant looking into the abyss itself, confronting the darkness lurking in the depths of the human soul. And when Sarah and her friends stood face to face with these nightmarish creatures, they knew that they were looking into the eyes of true horror.
Welcome to our circus,
one of the clowns growled, and there was anger in his voice. Sarah's heart was pounding as she tried to work up the courage to speak. Oh, sorry. It seems we are lost. We need to go. The clowns looked at each other with a grin.
We can't just let our dear guests go. There have been no visitors to our circus for a long time.
What do you want from us? Jake said, plucking up courage. The clown's laughter grew louder.
We just want to play a little,
the clown croaked, waving a rusty knife. The teenagers screamed and turned and ran, their footsteps echoing through the empty tent as they raced to escape the clutches of the haunted circus. But no matter how fast they ran, the clowns were always one step behind, their laughter echoing in the darkness as they chased their terrified prey. Finally, they escaped to the exit of the tent and, gasping for breath, collapsed on the cold, damp ground. Weeks had passed since the terrifying encounter with the haunted circus, but the memory of the evil clowns still lingered in the minds of Sarah, Max, Lily, and Jake. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the ominous presence of the circus still loomed over them. One evening, as they gathered at Sarah's house for movie night, a sudden power cut plunged everything into darkness. At first, they laughed it off as a typical inconvenience, but their laughter turned to fear when they heard the faint sounds of circus music coming from the night air.
That can't be,
Max whispered, his voice trembling with horror. Sarah's heart sank when she realized that the clowns were back and seeking revenge. Without hesitation, they grabbed their flashlights and headed outside, their hearts pounding in their chests as they walked to the eerie tune through the deserted streets, approaching the old circus tent. They saw that it was no longer abandoned. Lights flickered inside, casting eerie shadows on the ground.
Maybe we should go. The second time, they won't let us leave just like that,
Lily whispered. If we don't put an end to this, they will haunt us for the rest of our lives, Sarah said with firm confidence and walked forward with a sense of foreboding. They pushed open the creaky doors and stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like blades. To their horror, they found themselves surrounded by the same evil clowns as before, their grins even wider and more sinister than before.
Did you think you could escape us?
One of the clowns grinned in an evil voice. Sarah clenched her fists, refusing to show her fear. We are not afraid of you! But the clowns only laughed, their laughter echoing through the empty corridors of the circus tent.
We'll see,
hissed another clown, waving a twisted cane. With a blood-curdling scream, the clowns rushed forward, their eyes blazing with madness as they approached the terrified teenagers. But Sarah refused to back down. With fierce determination, she grabbed the face of one of the clowns with her hands. Sarah squeezed his face so tightly with her fingers that the clown mask flew off the villain's face. Sarah was not taken aback. She saw a dimly burning candle in the corner of the room and ran toward it. I will stop this nightmare, Sarah shouted and began to set fire to the mask. Lily, Jake, and Max, despite their fear, fought with all their might, not allowing the darkness to consume them. The mask caught fire in a matter of seconds. Sarah dropped it on the floor and a fire started. The tent burst into flames with instant speed. Finally, they managed to escape from the clowns and run away. They ran out of the circus tent, beaten and bruised. Heartbreaking laughter mixed with cries for help echoed to them. In the morning, the children returned to the tent and saw that only charred rubble remained from the circus. I didn't dream about this? Asked Max, who was in a state of shock. You wouldn't even dream of something like this, even in your worst nightmare, answered Sarah. The friends looked at each other and realized that they had faced their fears that night, and because of this, they had become even stronger. The ominous laughter rang in the teenagers' heads for a long time, but no longer posed any danger to them.